My name is Sarah, and for years I believed in one simple truth. I had to earn my future myself. I wasn't rich, not even close. My grandparents, the only people who truly cared for me after my parents passed, had saved a small fund for my college, enough to cover tuition and books, maybe a little extra if I budgeted perfectly. That money was precious, my lifeline, my ticket to independence. Meanwhile, my father had remarried. My stepmother, Clara, and my stepsister, Mia, were difficult, to say the least. From the moment I moved in with them, I felt their resentment simmering just beneath the surface. At first, it was subtle, sighs when I spoke about college, little comments about how much effort I had to put in for things they didn't have to worry about. Then, it escalated. Clara started insisting I do more chores, more errands, more family responsibilities, all while dismissing my schoolwork. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" She snapped one evening when I asked if I could study after dinner. I didn't respond. I nodded. I had learned early that arguing only made things worse. Mia, meanwhile, spent her time flaunting everything I couldn't afford: clothes, gadgets, makeup, lavish trips. And every time she smiled at me, it was a smile that said, "You're nothing next to me." I worked 2 part-time jobs, sometimes skipping meals, staying awake late at night to save every penny for tuition and books. My friends went out, had fun, while I counted coins and rationed food. My grandparents occasionally sent me extra money, but even then I rationed it, always mindful of the future. The worst part? They didn't even try to hide their envy. They saw my grandparents' money as a gold mine. Every time I mentioned needing funds for textbooks or lab fees, Clara would mutter under her breath, "Why does she get everything handed to her?" I clenched my jaw and swallowed my frustration. I wasn't allowed to be angry. I wasn't allowed to complain. I was just the poor stepdaughter, working and starving to chase my dreams while they lived off comfort and entitlement. And yet, I never stopped dreaming. By the time I reached my junior year of college, the simmering tension at home had turned into an almost palpable hostility. Clara and Mia no longer tried to hide their disdain for me or for the money my grandparents had saved for my education. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was a quiet war waged in glances, passive-aggressive comments, and carefully calculated manipulations designed to make me feel small, weak, and powerless. Every morning, I would wake before the sun, make breakfast for the household, clean the kitchen, and ensure every chore was done before I even thought of leaving for classes or heading to work. I had a full schedule: 8 hours of lectures, 4 to 6 hours at a part-time job, sometimes skipping meals to save a few dollars for textbooks or lab fees. Clara, meanwhile, spent her mornings gossiping with friends over coffee, pretending to be exhausted from managing the family, while sneering at me when I asked for a quiet corner to study. "You think your college is more important than your family duties?" she would ask, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You need to remember, this house comes first." Mia, on the other hand, was relentless in her displays of wealth and privilege. She flaunted expensive clothes and makeup, laughed at parties I couldn't attend, and made pointed remarks about how she would never have to work as hard as I did. Every smile she directed at me was sharpened with envy, every compliment an insult in disguise. Then came the subtle attacks on my college fund. At first, it was small things. Clara would suggest helping me out with textbooks, then insist she needed to check the bank statements, or casually ask why my grandparents had saved money for me only when she and Mia deserved help too. I learned to smile through the tension, nod politely, and never show my anger. Any outburst could be twisted into proof of immaturity or irresponsibility. I kept meticulous notes of every conversation, every comment, every attempt to manipulate me financially. The household atmosphere became oppressive. I stopped sharing anything personal, my achievements, my stresses, even my dreams, because it was always met with resentment or ridicule. I learned to eat quietly, work quietly, study quietly, live quietly. Yet, every time I thought I was alone in this struggle, I remembered my grandparents. Their unwavering support became my anchor. Their letters, their small gifts, and their encouraging words reminded me why I was enduring this daily torment. I wasn't powerless. I was preparing to break free. And then came the day that would begin the unraveling: Thanksgiving dinner. Clara had spent weeks planning it as a show of family unity. She wanted to flaunt wealth, mock my frugality, and subtly pressure me into revealing exactly how much my grandparents had saved for my college. She didn't know I had been preparing for this moment as carefully as she had planned hers. As I walked into the dining room that evening, I noticed the tension in the air. Clara smiled too widely, Mia's eyes sparkled with anticipation, and my father, oblivious as ever, complimented the turkey. But I felt it. The undercurrent of malice. They were hungry, but not for food. They were hungry for control, for money, for humiliation. I, on the other hand, was ready. Everything I had endured, every insult, every moment of hunger, every sleepless night spent studying while they laughed in their rooms, they had made me meticulous, cautious, and patient. This dinner wouldn't end in quiet suffering. I just needed the perfect moment to expose them, and it was coming. The table was set perfectly. Polished silverware, crisp napkins, the turkey glistening with golden perfection. Every detail Clara had orchestrated was meant to impress friends, relatives, anyone who could witness her perfect family image. But I noticed the subtle tension. The way Mia fidgeted with her napkin, the way Clara's smile was just slightly too tight. I had been preparing for this night for weeks. Every move, every question, every topic they tried to steer toward, the money, my savings, my college fund, was recorded in my mind, every possible scenario rehearsed silently. Dinner began with the usual small talk. My father complimented the turkey. Relatives laughed at anecdotes about family vacations. But I could sense the storm brewing. Clara leaned closer to Mia and whispered, loud enough for me to hear. She thinks she's smarter than us because of that money. Just wait until tonight. She'll slip. I smiled politely. Inwardly, I was bracing. I knew tonight, their true colors, the greed they tried to hide for years, would finally be exposed. The first sign of their desperation came when Clara tried the usual tactic, subtle accusations disguised as concern. Sarah, she began sweetly, you've been working so hard. I just hope you're not forgetting family responsibilities. I mean, college funds are important, but the family's well-being comes first, don't you think? I froze for a heartbeat, then nodded. Calm, neutral. Of course, Clara, I'm managing both. Don't worry. Her eyes narrowed. She realized her attempt to guilt me wasn't working. Next, Mia jumped in, her tone sharper than usual. You know, Sarah, some of us could use some financial help too. I mean, your grandparents saved all this for you? It seems a little unfair, doesn't it? I looked at her, my smile controlled, my voice steady. Grandparents save for grandchildren based on what they believe is best. I appreciate it and I respect their wishes. Her face tightened. She wasn't used to being questioned calmly. She expected tears, panic, defensiveness. She got none of that. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Clara tried to escalate, moving closer, lowering her voice. You know, Sarah, if you were generous, we wouldn't have to make such a big deal about money. You could share. We're family, after all. I looked directly at her, holding her gaze. Actually, Clara, I said slowly, deliberately, I think it's important everyone understands the truth about intentions and respect. And I began to recount everything. Their manipulations, their whispered threats, their attempts to access the money my grandparents had saved for my college. I described how they had mocked my work, dismissed my sacrifices, and tried to make me feel guilty for budgeting carefully and living responsibly. Mia tried to interrupt, but I ignored her. Clara's smile faltered. Her voice, usually sharp with control, wavered. I've kept quiet for years, I continued. I've worked, studied, and saved while being told I wasn't enough. But tonight, everyone needs to see the truth. I produced a folder I had brought with me. Bank statements, receipts, documented conversations, even photographs of notes and messages showing their attempts to manipulate me. I handed copies to everyone at the table. The room fell silent. Relatives gasped. My father stared, stunned. Clara's face went pale. Mia's jaw dropped. You've been lying all this time? One cousin whispered. Clara tried to speak, but the words faltered in her throat. You thought you could pressure me, manipulate me, guilt me into giving up what my grandparents saved for my education, I said firmly. But the truth is out. Your greed has been exposed. By the end of dinner, the atmosphere had completely changed. Clara and Mia, who had spent years trying to belittle me and steal my future, were humiliated in front of everyone. Their whispers, their sideways glances, their thinly veiled jealousy, all revealed. And me? I felt a surge of triumph. Not because I wanted revenge in a petty sense, but because justice finally had been served. My perseverance, my patience, my careful planning, everything had paid off. For the first time in years, I could eat dinner without fear, without shame, without hiding. The Thanksgiving dinner didn't just end with shock. It ignited a chain reaction that Clara and Mia never anticipated. At first, they tried to save face. Clara attempted her usual manipulative charm, smiling at relatives, shrugging off my revelations as misunderstandings. Mia, meanwhile, tried sulking, pouting, attempting to play the innocent victim who was misunderstood. But the evidence was irrefutable. Copies of bank statements, notes, and messages circulated quietly among the adults at the table. Every whisper of dissent, every accusation they had tried to make against me for being spoiled or ungrateful was shattered. My cousins, my aunts, even distant relatives who barely knew the daily dynamics began questioning Clara and Mia's intentions. What? How could you treat her like that? My aunt finally asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. After all she's worked for and after everything your parents did to help you, she's been living responsibly, and you've been. She stopped, shaking her head, unable to finish. Clara's composure cracked. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and the tightly controlled smile faded. Mia's eyes darted around, looking for an escape that didn't exist. My father, who had been silent for much of the dinner, finally spoke. I didn't know how much you've endured, Sarah. I knew you worked hard, but I had no idea. His voice broke. He looked at Clara, then at Mia. I thought you were helping her, but it seems... He trailed off, a combination of disappointment and shock on his face. Clara's defensive attempt came next. I was just trying to protect the family, to help manage finances. Protect, I interrupted, calm but firm. You tried to control my money, belittled my hard work, and manipulated me into guilt. That is not protection. That is greed. The room was completely silent. Even the younger cousins, who had been quietly observing, were staring. Mia finally tried to speak, her voice shaky. Sarah, it's not like that. It is like that, I said, and everyone here can see it now. For the first time, Clara and Mia were powerless. Their years of manipulation, subtle gaslighting, and envy had been laid bare in front of everyone who mattered. After dinner, the fallout continued. My grandparents called the next day, proud and relieved. My father, for the first time in years, apologized sincerely for not realizing how much I had struggled. Friends who were aware of the household tension reached out to express support, offering encouragement and, in some cases, assistance for my studies. Clara and Mia? They retreated into the corner they had carved out for themselves. Their jealousy and attempts at control had backfired spectacularly, leaving them humiliated and exposed. No one at the family gatherings or in extended social circles would take their side after seeing the truth. And me? I felt a strange mix of relief, triumph, and finally freedom. All the sacrifices, the late nights, the skipped meals, and the relentless persistence had not only protected my future, but had also revealed the true character of those around me. For the first time in my life, I could enjoy my achievements without fear, guilt, or manipulation. My college fund remained intact, my independence secured, and my dignity restored. I had survived years of envy, cruelty, and subtle sabotage, and I had done so with patience, intelligence, and resilience. I realized something profound. True strength is not about revenge. It's about preparation, patience, and integrity. And when the moment comes, those who tried to undermine you will be revealed exactly as they are. The Thanksgiving dinner had ended, but the echoes of that night lingered in every corner of the house. What had been a carefully orchestrated showcase of family unity for Clara and Mia had completely backfired. Instead of celebrating together, the family had witnessed years of envy, manipulation, and greed laid bare. Clara tried to salvage her image immediately after the dinner. She plastered on a practiced smile, trying to appear calm and collected in front of my father and the relatives who were still lingering, sipping after-dinner coffee. But the confidence was gone. The charm was hollow. Every whisper of guilt and envy that I had documented and presented now hung over her like a storm cloud. Mia's attempts to act innocent were even more pathetic. She tried to claim that she had only asked about my college funds out of curiosity, and that she had never intended to pressure me. But the evidence, the emails, the subtle messages, the accounts of her manipulative comments spoke louder than her words ever could. She could no longer charm or guilt anyone. The truth was too glaring. I remember watching Clara's hands tremble as she poured coffee for my father. She avoided eye contact with me, which was a stark contrast to the smirk she had worn for years whenever she thought I wasn't noticing. Every relative at the table seemed to be weighing the evidence I had presented. The silent judgment in the room was palpable. My father, who had been mostly oblivious to the undercurrents in his household, finally spoke. His voice shook, tinged with both disappointment and remorse. I didn't know you were enduring this, Sarah. I thought you were managing just fine. I never realized the extent of their behavior, he said, his gaze flicking between Clara and Mia. Clara tried to respond, flustered. I was trying to guide her, help her understand, but my father cut her off. No, Clara, that's not guidance, that's control, that's manipulation, and I cannot allow it to continue. Mia, seeing her mother faltering, tried to salvage the situation. Dad, Sarah's overreacting. I was just curious. It wasn't a big deal. Curiosity, I echoed calmly. For years, you've tried to make me feel guilty for every dollar my grandparents saved for my education. You mocked me, belittled me, and threatened to manipulate that money for yourselves. And you thought it was curiosity? Silence fell across the room. Even the younger cousins and distant relatives who were visiting could feel the tension. Clara and Mia had been so careful for so long, hiding their greed and envy under layers of politeness and charm. Tonight, every layer had peeled away. I handed my father the folder again, full of documentation, emails, messages, and receipts. This is everything, I said. The truth of how long they've been trying to manipulate me, undermine me, and take what isn't theirs. My father flipped through it, his eyes widening at the meticulous records. He looked at Clara and Mia, his voice sharp and unwavering. I am done allowing this household to be a place of manipulation and cruelty. Clara, Mia, this behavior is unacceptable. Clara's face turned red, her carefully cultivated composure finally broken. She tried to argue, to plead, but every word sounded hollow, weak. The relatives, who had once looked to her as the matriarchal authority, now shook their heads in disappointment. Mia's shoulders slumped. She tried to hold on to some dignity, but it was clear that the facade she had built for years had crumbled in an instant. And then my father did something I had never expected. He smiled, not at Clara or Mia, but at me. You've handled this with patience, with integrity, and with intelligence. Your grandparents would be proud. I'm proud. And I want you to know that nothing they've done will ever jeopardize your future. You've earned every opportunity coming to you. Tears prickled my eyes, but I held them back. For years I had endured hunger, exhaustion, and ridicule. For years I had been gaslit to thinking I was powerless in my own home. Tonight, all of that ended. Clara and Mia left the room shortly after, humiliated and defeated. Their whispers behind closed doors could not erase what had happened in front of the family. Everyone now knew the truth, and the balance of power in the house had irrevocably shifted. In the weeks that followed, life changed dramatically. My grandparents increased their support, not out of pity, but out of pride for my perseverance. My father became more present, ensuring that no one could ever undermine me again. Friends who had known about my struggle reached out, offering encouragement, advice, and even tutoring assistance when needed. Most importantly, I realized something vital. Strength isn't about fighting aggressively or seeking revenge. It's about patience, preparation, and standing firm when the time is right. I had survived years of envy, cruelty, and manipulation. I had worked tirelessly, sacrificed endlessly, and endured in silence. And now, I could finally enjoy the fruits of my labor, without fear or shame and with dignity fully intact. That Thanksgiving, I didn't just celebrate a meal. I celebrated justice, perseverance, and triumph.